So we are reading At the Dark End of the Street, Black Women, Race, and Resistance, A New History of the Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power by Danielle McGuire. And our sessions it started June 3rd, and they last until July 29th. They are from 6:30 to 8. So I'll read the overview, and then the first key point, and then the first question, so we can get started. So Chapter 7 focused on the civil rights marches implemented to end segregation, Governor Wallace's efforts to uphold white supremacy, and the hostility and violence of prominent white supremacist officers Bull Connor and James Clark of Alabama. This chapter discussed how the violence of the KKK and police brutality worked in civil rights activists and Black Americans' favors for their nonviolent stance compared to the beatings, arrests, and attacks they endured, captured the nation's attention, and demanded FBI protection. In Chapter 7, we also learn how congressmen and local police officers and KKK members twisted the mission and intention of the civil rights marches and made them out to be about sex and sex orgies instead of about ending the oppression of Jim Crow. This chapter also focuses on the death of Viola Liuzzo, a white woman who was killed by the KKK as they suspected her of interracial sexual relations with Leroy Wilkins, a Black man. Chapter 7 followed the trial against Liuzzo's murderers and showed how tainting the victim's image and reputation and chastising her for not upholding racial and gender norms played a major role even for white women when it came to indicting murderers. Lastly, Chapter 7 focuses on the rape and abduction of Rosa Lee Coates, and in the end, the lifetime sentence Norman Cannon was given for his attack, and the Loving versus Virginia case where Mildred and Richard Loving were arrested and exiled from Virginia to Washington, D.C. for their marriage. Richard Loving was a white man and Mildred was a Black woman. Key points number 1. James Clark, the bellicose county sheriff who wore a never integrate button pinned to his uniform, enforced white supremacy with an iron fist. The most polite request to enter the registrar's office for voting could set off Clark's notorious temper, prompting beatings, mass arrests, and other violent outbursts. Clark's primitive itch to attack Negroes, as Taylor Branch put it, drove him 30 miles outside Dallas County to Marion, Alabama on February 18, 1965, where Lotus planned the nighttime march. Clark stood among state troopers who amassed outside Zion Chapel Methodist Church, waiting for the 500 protesters inside to file out. When the doors to the chapel opened, police shot out the street lights, sprayed black paint on lenses of reporters' cameras, and charged through the crowd. Negroes could be heard screaming, the New York Times reported, and loud whacks rang through the square. Reaction to this graphic scene. Hello?
Yeah, I thought we lost sound with you. Go ahead. I got you back.
What was your initial reaction to this graphic scene? Some have said that MLK did not do anything, but it is evident in acts of violence like these that MLK's nonviolent stance worked in favor of African Americans' need for freedom and the end of Jim Crow. Do you believe it is still powerful to read and see images where white mob violence is met with Black nonviolence?
I found it powerful to read that scene at Edmund Pettus Bridge, and you know, I was just saying to Benita last night that I am really so honored to be connected to the group of people that are here in the book group, because this has been a very difficult book to read. It's violent, 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 as is our history. But it is precisely because it is so painful that Black people don't want to know our history, and white people don't want to know it either. And so we just keep going round and round and round in circles, not solving any problems because so many people are running from the basic facts. Because looking at the facts takes courage. Um, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. So yeah, I found reading about that whole history of the Selma to Montgomery march difficult.
Mm-hmm. Benita, you have anything?
No, actually I don't. I think Michelle has said it all. I'm thinking.
Georgette?
Well, yeah, I love how you phrase that, Michelle, about we can't face, we don't have the courage to face the history of the very violent history, and we keep going around in circles. And part of that is not having the courage, but also not having inclusive educational systems. So everyone is not afraid of the history. If you know what happened, then you can take steps to avoid repeating it. And just seeing, the film clips of what happened during the marches and the police and turning loose dogs and fire hoses and against children are difficult images to see as well as read about. But they're necessary because we won't change. We'll think everything is just fine, or that history doesn't apply to us in the present.
Joel, I appreciate your determination to join us tonight.
Oh, well, hey, it was
Can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, it
Yes.
probably was operator error, so, But,
Okay.
But I finally got it. I was listening to a lot of some of the comments on YouTube. I could hear on YouTube, and then I came back. I had to reboot and stuff like that. I was trying to use another headphone. It wouldn't work, but
Okay.
Okay. So which part are you on right now?
We're on the first question, the first key point discussion.
Okay.
And Michelle just answered it, and Georgette kind of fed into it as well.
Okay.
In terms of myself, Michelle, I do agree with you. With what you said, it is very difficult. It really is, but this chapter, wasn't as difficult. And I think maybe because I had done the chapter early and didn't know that y'all were still on chapter 6. So I think it helped that I didn't have to reread it because I had already done the work for it. But I'm very makes me very empathetic, even to people who really try to avoid this, because it is painful. And I understand that some days you got to choose your battles, and some days it's not history. Some days, it can't always be that way, but some days you have to decide what you're gonna struggle with. And so it just made me very empathetic. It made me very proud, and it wasn't, though it was a difficult scene to read about. I I was just very proud after I had read it. That we're Black people are very resilient.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I think also in terms of your point about, you know, people saying that King wasn't doing anything. You know, I mean, we continue to debate the value of nonviolent strategies, but you know, I always wonder when people are proposing violence, you know, how they imagine that working out for us. You know, in terms of this country, you know, Black people are in the minority. You know, and just the sheer firepower that the state commands, it you know, it's pretty daunting. So you know, you hear me and Benita say all the time, we would not have survived living during slavery or but you know, but that's true because we would be dead, we would have been killed. And what King was doing by promoting a nonviolent strategy, you know, one of the books that's on the list, I think it's called This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed, and it's talking about all of the guns that were a part of the civil rights movement that Black people had. And there's a story about, you know, if you walked into King's bedroom, some guy sat down, you know, nearly sat down on a gun. That, you know, he certainly understood the need for self-defense, but what he was trying to do was keep the masses of Black people alive. And, you know, if you just, now, see, here I am going on and on. I said we weren't going to do speeches tonight, Joel. But, you know, I mean, but that's the thing. And, you know, I love Malcolm. I love Kwame Ture. You know, I get it. But what King was doing was trying to keep Black people alive. And, you know, maybe somebody should be thankful for that.
Well, as we discussed before, Michelle, I would have been one of those ones who would have been willing to die. Honest to God. And I can honestly say that I would have been willing to die because it was certainly no way to live. But I'm just one of those, you know, Apache type, warrior type people. Must be the Indian coming out. I just think I'd have rather been dead. I probably did something crazy, you know, and broke every rule and everything.
Did we lose you?
I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear
kind
you.
of a delay going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, that's.
I have a thing.
I mean, I appreciate. I'm losing you.
I have a.
I can hear you when you are speaking. It's just that it goes out, maybe because of delay, as you said.
Okay.
That's my fault. It might have worked then also, but it definitely wouldn't work today. One question I do have, as Black people, we are a minority, but we're not a minority if we couple ourselves as brown people as a whole. Power is in numbers. And in this country, last I checked, brown people all fall in the same category. Whether you're from here, whether you're from a continent, or whether you're from an island, you all fall in the same category. So if power is in numbers, if all the brown people were to get together, well, we would be the majority by a landslide, by millions.
That's how Obama was elected.
Because in this country, you know, if you're not white, you are black. Whether you came from Venezuela, El Salvador, you can come from Jamaica, Panama, you can come from, you know, the North Pole. If you're brown, you're black in this country. So, and too many times I hear in the division among the different brown people that come from other places that associate or try to disassociate themselves with black Americans. That's a whole different subject. We'll keep it moving. I'll just say that if all the brown people were to stand together, then we would be a force to be reckoned with. As a matter of fact, we could be reckoned with. Okay. And of course, in the orderly, you know, fashion, that is, not to just go out and lose your head, but to we couldn't be reckoned with. But again, that's another discussion. We'll keep it moving.